And so I'm just excited to be able to speak the word and to share what God has put within his word, and to enjoy the fellowship of the saints, and to be able to explore some of the things that, perhaps I don't normally touch upon, because we're going through the great book of 1 Corinthians, and we're doing it step by step, incrementally, and it's forcing me to attend to some things that, in general terms, I would not always attend to, because I have my preferences. I have certain things that I like to talk about, certain leanings that I have, and this is a little bit of discipline, but it's necessary discipline. Based on the fact that we are living in a world where all of the essentials of Christendom and our traditional, baked in Western culture, Judeo-Christian roots is being dismantled, and we need to be able to address these things for ourselves as well as for the world at large. So today we are going to be walking down the aisle, and we're going to be talking about marriage and about singleness. But 1 Corinthians chapter 7 is a chapter devoted to marriage. The whole chapter, it might take us 2 or 3 weeks to get through it all. What is it? Well, a few years ago, I would have just skipped this chapter, because everybody in society had the notion of what marriage is. That marriage is between a man and a woman, and that it's a covenant, and it is designed to be entered into and enjoyed for the duration of your life, till death us do part. And today, marriage has been so misconstrued, so changed and altered and legislated, that no longer can it be taken for granted that that is the perception of what marriage indeed is. But when you come to the Word of God, especially when you come to 1 Corinthians chapter 7, you there find, all of Corinthians is addressing the ABCs of life. And so when you come to 1 Corinthians 7, it spells out the basics, the very basics of what marriage is. It does so because the Corinthians were immature. They were immature about all things in church life. And so Paul deals with things in a very basic kind of way. I understand that when I'm talking about these things, that in our church we've got people who are in all different situations in life. We've got people that have been happily married for 30 and 40 years, and we've got people that are single, people that are divorced, people that are in all manner of situations. Within our church, we've had people that come in that are in a living together situation, that are not married, all different kinds of situations. 1 Corinthians 7 addresses all of these. And so anything that is said is not said to make anybody feel uncomfortable, certainly not to make people feel guilty. Quite the opposite, in fact. Not trying to target or point the finger at anybody, but we've got people who are involved at all levels of life on the marital scale. Yes. And so we're just simply going to be going through something so that we can get God's eye view of what marriage and what singleness, being a single person in life, is all about. Yes. Today, people get their ideas of what marriage is from all kinds of sources. Not from the Word. Not from the Word, but all kinds of sources, like Sex and the City, like maths, Married at First Sight, like all kinds of ideas are thrown at us. And if you're getting your perception of what a good relationship or a good marriage looks like from these kinds of sources, then you are missing out on what could be your best life, your best chance at a good marriage. Last week I talked about the gospel-shaped church, how the church is shaped by the gospel, and I spoke about it particularly in relation to the fact that we have to be an outward-looking and not an inward-focused kind of church. And so we are a going, not a staying people. We're a giving, not a getting people. We're a people that are looking beyond ourselves and not into ourselves. We're not consumed by thoughts of how many people we've got or how much money is coming in or all of these kinds of things. But we're shaped in that way by the gospel, because for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. You know, God is a giving God. That shapes us to be a going and a giving kind of church. Well, just as the church is shaped by the gospel, so too marriage needs to be shaped by the gospel. A gospel-shaped marriage. And if you are single, a gospel-shaped single life. A gospel-shaped life. Yes. Paul, in his discussion of marriage, makes some quite revolutionary statements. One of the things that he says is that our relationship with one another, particularly with the opposite sex, is a relationship of consent. Now, in Paul's day, there was no such thing as consent. Consent is a Christian idea. The Romans would never think of a woman having to consent to them doing whatever they wanted to do with them. But Paul introduces to the church the notion of consent. And so today's Me Too movement has its basis in Christianity. That's a revolutionary thing. Yes. The next thing that is revolutionary is that Paul doesn't allow any room for polygamy. So the pagans, they reveled in polygamy. But Christianity knows nothing about polygamy. We don't teach Mormonism here. The Jews, up until about the 10th century, they had room for polygamy. And if you read the Old Testament and you'll read about kings having multiple wives, but not when you come to Christianity. Islam, of course, believes in polygamy, but not Christianity. In Christianity, it is one man and one woman. That's called monogamy, not polygamy. All right. The other thing that Paul says that is revolutionary is that the rules that apply to the woman also apply to the man. And Paul normally puts it in the way of speaking about a rule that is imposed upon the wife or upon the woman, and everybody would agree that in that era, everybody would agree that those rules do apply to the women, but then Paul would turn it around and he would flip it and he would say, yeah, but the same goes for you men. And that would have been a shocking thing for them back then. Back in a time where Aristotle taught that the birth of a female was a mistake, that all fetuses were male. And then, but if you were born female, then something went wrong in the gestation period. Yeah. Where in Roman culture, the woman was just one or two steps above a slave, just one or two steps above something that was property. Yeah. Where Pharisees used to pray, God, I thank you that you have not made me a Gentile, a tax collector, or a woman. Yeah. And Paul comes along and revolutionizes all of that. Yes. So, Paul has already, I don't know if you remember a few messages back, Paul has already given some marital advice. He has said, you should not marry someone who is too close. You need to be careful in who you choose to marry. Not someone too close, but also not someone that is too strange. Yes. Not too close. You remember the story about a man hooking up with his stepmother. Yeah, no more needs to be said about that. Not too close, but also not too strange. That you have to be careful in choosing who you marry. Don't rush in to a relationship. Don't rush in where angels would fear to tread. You have to be wise and cautious, because you could put the next 10 years or 20 years of your life out of kilter if you rush in, if you don't make wise decisions. I always tell people to watch for the red flags, to watch for little signs. I know everybody around you, all of your friends, all of the people that you know, your sisters, your brothers, they've all gotten married. Don't make that pressure you into rushing into marriage. Don't allow that to make you desperate, because desperation can end up in trouble. Be careful. Don't allow your loneliness to cause you to sweep those little warning signals under the carpet. Just say, I know that was concerning, but I don't want to think about that just now, because I don't want to take that up. I don't want to challenge on that right now, because I just want a sweet forward progression in our relationship. Yes. Watch for the warning signs. Watch for the activation of disgust mechanisms, involuntary signs in the in the person that you are speaking with. Involuntary signs like the rolling of the eyes. Watch for that. Watch for that. If you're counseling people that are struggling in their marriage, the number one sign that this is going to end in divorce is eye rolling. He says something, here we go again. She says something. Watch for those things. Disgust mechanisms like the turning up of the nose. Watch for those things. Yes. Watch how they treat people who are not important in their socio-economic circle. Watch how they treat... Don't base your relationship upon how they treat their crew, about how they treat those that are their support mechanisms, by how they treat those who can help them to get up in the world and to climb the ladder. Don't base what your relationship is going to be upon how they treat those that are good to them and good for them. Watch how they treat those that don't matter in their lives, how they treat somebody that could be a waitress or a checkout operator. Watch how they treat these kinds of people that they may never see again, and watch how they talk with them. That will be what you are going to be sleeping with for the rest of your life. Yes. Watch for points of aggression. And don't come to me and say, I didn't see that coming. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. You just slid it under the carpet. Said, we'll deal with that at a later day, but let's get married because I'm desperate. Yeah. Are we all right now? We haven't even gotten into verse 1. So 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 1. Now about the matters you wrote about, it is good for a man not to touch a woman, because touch awakens desire. It is good for a man not to touch a woman. But ladies, you have to also be careful when touching a man. We have to be careful with touch in moments of vulnerability. When somebody is talking with you about how things are going on at home, that it's not as healthy as it should be. When they're speaking about their life and about what pain and discomfort they are in, and they're a member of the opposite sex, and you have to be careful. At those moments especially, you have to be careful. Because you will take into your arms vulnerability. Yes. And so you need to be careful at those times. I have seen many a marriage counselor, many a pastor find himself terminated because of compassion that has stepped over the line. It all started out with good intention. Yes. And so it's good not to touch. This is also talking about how desire is awakened within us. How quickly things can advance. I remember the first time that I touched Sasha, how we were walking along the Torrens River, and we bumped shoulders. Oh, and it sounds almost like something that only a school kid would get excited about, but it was very exciting as we bumped shoulders walking along the Torrens River. I'm somebody who doesn't engage in physical touch without a decision to do so. I got to tell you, when we were walking along the Torrens River, I didn't move away as our shoulders bumped. I remember the first time we held each other's hands. Just holding each other's hands is very exciting. Yes. So where do you draw the line when it comes to touch? When is something going too far? If holding hands can create hormone reaction, when there is an increase of attraction just through holding hands, where do you draw the line? Yes. Do I need to give a rule? Do I need to? I think I do. I think I do, because we're talking about the ABCs here. We're talking to the immature when we're talking, going through Corinthians. Where do you draw the line? Are you not allowed to touch each other until the day you get married? Well, in some societies, that's how it has been over the years. That won't fly in a Western culture. So where do you draw the line? I'll give you a rule. You can do whatever you would do were you in the presence of the public. You can do whatever you would do were you to be in the presence of your parents. You can do whatever you would do were you to be in the presence of your pastors. And if you can't do that, then maybe you're stepping over the line. You never know, once you start down that path, where it is going to end. But the simple fact is, from a psychological as well as a spiritual point of view, that when you go too far, you do pay for it later on. When you go too far when you're young, there are psychological and spiritual repercussions later on. But young ladies who have been indiscreet in their youth will struggle with frigidity in their maturer years, when they hit their 40s generally, on account of being indiscreet when they were in their teenage years. And so you want to be careful how far you touch, so that you can enjoy your life into the future, so that your life and your marriage and your family can be shaped by the gospel. The gospel means good news. Yes. The gospel is good news. But there are a lot of marriages and a lot of families that are full of bad news. And so we want our lives to be shaped by the gospel so that we can enjoy good news throughout our lives. Are we good? You still with me? All right. Now, about the matters you wrote about, it's good for a man not to touch a woman. Nevertheless, to avoid fornication, let every man have his own wife. Yes. You have your own wife, so keep your eyes off of my wife. Yeah. Why are you looking wherever you can, sir, when you've got your own wife to look at? Why gaze your eyes through the internet to see what you can see of others when you have your own wife? Yes. I'm not saying that to the women because women are generally not compelled by the eyes as much as they are by the touch. Yes, but men, you've got your own wife. Keep your eyes on her. She will appreciate that. Your marriage will appreciate that. Men with wondering eyes. I got the wondering eye. That's a band. It's a New Zealand band called Fat Freddy's. I got the wondering eye. Yes. Men with their wondering eyes, walking along with their wives, but looking at any other woman that they can. Slap him in the face. Just turn around and slap him in the face. He'll probably understand why. All right. Nevertheless, to avoid fornication, let every man have his own wife, and let every woman have her own husband. Every man and every woman. It's not good that man or woman be alone. God understands that. Paul is not against marriage. He wants every man and every woman to have their spouse. Let the husband render unto the wife due benevolence. Let him give to her kindness and goodness and love and all of the things that she could desire. And likewise the wife unto the husband. The wife hasn't power over her own body, but the husband, she doesn't have authority over her own body. But the husband, well, all men back then would have agreed with that, and most men today would agree with that. But listen to this. And likewise the husband has not power over his own body, but the wife. That was a shock for that to be said. Don't defraud one another. He's saying, don't deprive each other. Don't give each other the cold shoulder. Don't stop talking to each other. Don't stop communicating. Don't give him the silent treatment. Don't give her silence as she's speaking to you and you're reading the newspaper in the morning or checking out your phone. Why hold things back from one another? That's what Paul is saying. Don't hold things back from one another. Don't live with secrets from one another. Don't have your secret life. This is my life. Don't have your own circle of friends and your own world over here, and I have my world over here, so that the two don't meet and we've got these two separate lives. Don't withhold from each other, but make sure that you give all of yourself to the other. Don't just give 50% of yourself. Don't have your separate bank accounts, but join your lives together so that there is complete giving of one another to each other. Yes. Yeah. Defraud not, don't hold back, don't withhold from one another, except it be with consent. So he's saying that, okay, you want to give yourselves to each other, but that does not necessarily mean that you can't have different interests. So the husband may like fishing or playing golf, and you may enjoy shopping with your girlfriends. He's not saying that you can't do those kinds of things, but he's saying let it be with consent. And the word that is used there is the Greek word symphonu. Symphonu. Now, who can hear a word that we use in that word symphonu? Symphony. The goal is to create beautiful music together. Yes. Now, Papa may play bass and Mama may play the cello, but the idea is to be playing the same tune together. And that should you want to do something that is alternate to what I want to do, and we might be poles apart in some areas, we've got to make sure that we create a connection there. And we've got to practice and practice and practice. Just like if you were in an orchestra, you would have to practice and practice and practice until you create this beautiful symphonic music together. That's what your marriage is meant to be. And if you're single, that is also what your singularity is meant to be. That there is meant to be something musical, something delightful, something lovely about your life in this kind of way. And if you're married, what you don't want is to have these discords taking place where it sounds like some modern music where you just end up getting angry and scratching your head and wondering what was that all about. But instead for there to be synchronicity so that we agree about the things that we are doing and that we're happy about it. Sasha doesn't have to do everything that I would want her to do. She doesn't have to do everything that I would want her to do. What do you do when I've got something that I would like her to do but she doesn't want to do it? Well, you fight, don't you? No, you don't. You work together until you come to a place where we're happy about this. You negotiate with each other. You talk about it, and you don't end up going, well, you do what you want to do, I'll just do what I want to do. That is the end, or the beginning of the end, I should say. Yes. So you have got to work at this. You've got to work at this. It's hard work. It is hard work to bring this about. You've got to work it. You've got to practice until you are in synchronicity, in harmony together, and you're able to enjoy your marriage together, where both of you are making beautiful music. Yes. Except that we be with consent for a time, that you may give yourselves to fasting and prayer. Getting spiritual now. And come together again, that Satan tempt you not for your incontinency. That he tempt you not because you have separated yourselves from one another. Paul is saying that the devil is out to destroy your marriage. That's what he's saying. The devil is out to destroy your marriage. And he will even take your spirituality and use it against you. My. Have I ever seen the devil pull that trick? Where he will spin a person's spirituality to the place where it creates disharmony between a married couple, where one of them especially one of them becomes so involved with the church, and the other one is left at home with the kids. Where one of them is so involved in going to conferences, so involved in fasting and prayer, in Pentecostal circles, is so involved in some wacky dimensions of spirituality. And it creates a situation where out of that spiritual life, the enemy is able to come in and create division and smash things up. And you wonder, well, I've just been trying to get close to God. I've just been living my life to God. I don't know what's wrong with him. He's not interested in these things like I'm interested in these things. I don't know all he's wanting is to have his wife. All she's wanting is to have her husband. But the enemy gets in and tempts you when you're trying to be at your most spiritual. So spiritual. Yes. And then he says, but I speak this by permission and not out of a commandment. For I would that all men were even as myself, that is, living a single life. But every man has his proper gift of God. One after this manner, and another after that. And so that's verse 7 of 1 Corinthians chapter 7. And the word gift there is the word grace. And this is really what I want to speak about now. Just give me a few minutes, and then we'll wind up. He's saying, if you're single, you need grace. And if you're married, you need grace. That you're not going to be able to enjoy your life as a single person unless you can find the grace of God to endure it. You think about all of the situations that can create singularity in a person's life. How it's not just the person who is in their 20s, who is in their 30s, or maybe in their 40s, that has never found somebody to enjoy a marriage together with for the rest of their lives. But it's also people that have been divorced. Some people that have been divorced twice, and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 times, that need to find grace. You're saying 7 times? Can anybody that's been married, divorced and remarried 7 times find grace? Well, where sin abounds, grace does much more abound. Yes. And how often did the disciples say, how often should we forgive somebody? 7 times? And Jesus said, not 7 times, but 70 times 7. So where a person has been through terrible situations and terrible circumstances and now finds themselves in a single state of life, there is a greater demand of grace for your life. But when I'm single, I need grace to be able to handle my loneliness. Paul was single. He had to find grace for his loneliness. Well, forget Paul. What about Jesus? Jesus was tempted in all points like as we. Had to find the grace of God for his loneliness and isolation. Many times you read of Jesus that he was alone and he would pray. With the grace you need to withstand temptation when you're a single person. The grace that you need to be able to come to church and not feel like a stranger in your own skin because you don't have somebody sitting alongside of you. When everybody else has somebody, but you don't have somebody. You need grace for that situation that you find in. Grace to be single so that I'm not consumed with my own feelings of how I've been mistreated or how I've been left out. Grace so that I can live with unanswered prayers. Grace so that I can live my life in a way that shows that it's good news and not bad news. Yeah. Many single people find themselves wasting their time worrying about when is somebody going to come along that I can marry. Wasting your time worried about that when you need to be spending your time accessing the grace of God. Wasting your creative energy. Wasting all of the energy that you have got that you could be focused upon doing something progressive with your life, something powerful with your life, and spending that time worried about why am I alone. So you need grace. Yes. And God gives you His grace. The trouble is not that God hasn't given you grace. The trouble is that you just aren't recognizing it when it's there. Paul said that there was a time in his life where he had a thorn in his flesh from the enemy, from the devil. A thorn was in his flesh. And he prayed to God that God would take the thorn away. He prayed 3 times, and so this was something that Paul was persisting with, trying to get his situation to change, praying for God to take away the thorn. And God said to him, "My grace is sufficient for you." And so you're spending all your time worried and praying that God would change your situation, when God is wanting you to discover that His grace is sufficient for you. In your isolation, in your solitariness, in your solitary confinement, in your singularity, in your prison cell, that His grace is sufficient for you. And when you find that, when you find everything that you can in the situation that you're in, once you find that, once you discover that, you have learned that lesson, and God can then open a door for you. But until you find God in that situation that you're in, the danger is that in your desperation, you will look to places to satisfy your need that is not the grace of God. And you will miss God's grace and misconstrue it as being in this person or in that person or this situation or that place, and go hunting for it down alleyways that God has never intended for you to go down. When instead, He just wants you to know that He loves you and that His grace is sufficient for you. Woo! Woo! I was going to be going into a monastery in my singleness. And then Sasha came along. And we bumped shoulders along the River Torrens on our walk down the aisle. Yes. And so single people look at married people and think, that's what I want. And married people, especially men, especially younger married men, but not only younger married men. Married people look at single people and think, man, if only I could be doing what you're doing right now. If only I could be not having to do what my spouse wants me to do. Then I'd be free. And we live in this twilight zone where we want what the other has, but you can't have what the other has. You can't have a gospel-shaped marriage or a gospel-shaped singularity. It's one or you can't have a gospel-shaped marriage and a gospel-shaped singularity all at once. You can't be married and just doing your own thing. God has grace for your marriage. He has grace, and you need grace when you're married for each other. And you need to have grace flowing into your life and flowing through your life into your children so that your family is built upon grace. So that when things go wrong, you don't go blaming and holding grudges and you don't go kicking your kids out of home, or you don't go having rifts and tears within the family, but that there is grace that flows through the family. You need grace when things go wrong. You need grace when your children are not doing what you want them to do. You need grace when your parents are not acting how parents should act. You need grace for things that have gone wrong in the past, and you need grace for stuff that is happening right now. You need grace. And grace is there. And the thing is that you can access it right now because it's there right now. You may not feel that it's there. It may not look like it's there, but it's there because the grace of God is there continually. Think of it like this. Think of your life, whether you are single or whether you are married. There are times when life seems to just be that little bit better than what it was a half an hour ago or a few days ago. There are times in your marriage where it will feel as though, well, if you were to attend to your marriage in the way that you should attend to it, which you don't, but if you were to, and if you were to understand what is going on in your marriage, and you don't, but if you were to, you would see that there are periods of time in your marriage where there is greater harmony than at other times, where things are enjoyable, where there is peace, where there's harmony. And what is taking place at that time is that it is like the light of God or the grace of God is shining down upon you in a concentrated way during that period of time. And then you come out of it and go back to feeling cantankerous with each other and wanting your own way and all of that. But for a period of time, there is joy, strength. There's something going on that is better than at other times. And so when you look at that, there's communication. There is connection. When you look at that, when you see that, it might only last for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. It may not last for very long at all, but there will be periods of your time. In your singleness, there'll be periods of time where you aren't screaming at the top of your voice for God to send you a woman or a man. There'll be times where you have peace, relative peace. If you can acknowledge and see those times where grace has come and descended, and it might only be for 5 minutes, but if you can pay attention and recognize it, if you can see at that moment that worry has vanished, that all concern and stress, and it's as though problems are way out in the distance. Yes, there are still bills. The bills are still there. Yes, there are still problems, and they are still there, but momentarily it seems that they are not there because you're just enjoying this moment. And if you can assess just what it is that you're doing at that time that has made a difference, if you can just figure it out, pay attention, figure it out, and practice doing that. You say, well, I don't know if I am doing anything different there to what I'm doing when we suddenly have an argument out of nowhere. I don't know if I am doing anything different there than if I'm just spending my time reading the newspaper. I can't see myself doing anything. Well, grace is God's gift. You can't merit it. But what you need to do is pay attention to that moment when it's there. Because something would have taken place at some time to bring that about, to give you access to the grace of God. The grace of God is always there. But something happened during that 10 minutes that has enabled you to be aware of it, to alert you to it, to enjoy it. It might have been a prayer that you prayed 6 months ago that suddenly opened up a door for you here now. It may not even have been something that you did. It might have been something that somebody else is doing for you. Maybe somebody else is praying for you right there. But something has opened up that opportunity. And what you do is that you get a hold of that and you seek to practice whatever is going on during that time, and you practice it, and you practice it. It's called practicing the presence of God. Good old Brother Lawrence. Practicing the presence of God. And you practice, and you practice, and you practice, and you might get that to extend to an hour. An hour of harmony, an hour of bliss, an hour of peace, an hour of rest, an hour of joy. And you keep on practicing that. And when you practice that, what you find is that grace that you have found, that you are now extending within your life, so that you're now walking in grace for an hour, walking on the beach, hand in hand, or in your solitariness, but in peace. There's not much you can do about the phone ringing while you're walking on the beach in your solitary confinement. But if you can just, what you'll find is that within that hour there will be sudden, really exquisite times, sudden, deeper times, times of greater intimacy with one another, with God, within yourself. And what is happening there is that the kingdom of God is in operation. Because the kingdom of God comes to you, and as you enter the kingdom, so you find that there's always more. It's called the mustard seed principle. That as a seed is planted, so it grows, and it grows, and it grows, and you enter in fractally, and you get greater and greater meaning and greater levels of God's presence within your life. So one thing leads to another and leads to another. And that is how you access the grace of God for your life personally, and for your marriage, and for your family. Yes. And you do that, and you are on your way to enjoying the rest of your life with God. Yes. So, Heavenly Father, I pray right now for every single one of us who is here, for you to help us to find your grace, to access your grace in ways that we never have before. Thank you for all that you have done for us up until this present moment in life. But God, every single one of us here today needs more. And so open up our hearts and open up our lives and help us to be attentive to what you're doing within our lives, within our marriages, within our singlenesses, within our families. Open us up to what you are doing, to what you are doing, to what you are doing. The enemy might have been having a field day, but you, God, are one step ahead of the enemy every single day, morning, day, and night. You are ahead of him in every way. Help us to see just what it is that you are up to, and for us to trust you and to see you in all of this. And everybody said amen and amen. God bless you all.